I delivered my baby completely alone without a single family member in that room, and while I was still in that hospital bed, my parents did not call or come. They sent me a Venmo request, and I stared at that screen for a long time. The Venmo notification came at 11:47 p.m. My daughter was 4 hours and 23 minutes old. She was asleep on my chest in the specific way of newborns who have just completed the most significant journey of their existence, and have found the one place in the world that carries the right heartbeat, the right warmth, the right smell. Her weight was 6 pounds 11 ounces, and she had her father's ears and my grandmother's mouth, and a full head of dark hair that the nurse had commented on twice. I had counted her fingers 3 times. I was going to count them again in a few minutes because the counting felt important in a way I could not articulate and did not need to. My phone was on the rolling table beside the hospital bed. I had put it there after calling Marcus, who had answered on the first ring at 7:43 in the morning when the contractions were still manageable, and had stayed on the phone with me for the first 2 hours until I needed both hands for other things, and we had said goodbye with the specific warmth of two people who had been friends for 11 years and who understood that some thresholds are crossed in the company of the people who choose to be there, and some are crossed with whoever the labor and delivery nurses are on a given Tuesday, which in my case was a woman named Donna who was efficient and kind and had the particular calm of a person who had been present for thousands of significant moments and understood that her presence was the gift regardless of her name. My parents had not answered when I called at 7:43. I had called my mother first. 4 rings and voicemail. I had left a message in the specific voice of a woman who is having contractions every 7 minutes, and is telling her mother that today is the day and she is going to the hospital and she would like her mother to be there if possible. I had called my father. 3 rings and voicemail. I had not left a message because I had already said what needed saying to my mother, and adding the same words to a second voicemail felt like the specific defeat of a person who is beginning to understand something they were not ready to understand. I had driven myself to the hospital. My daughter was born at 7:24 p.m. after 11 hours of labor, during which my mother did not call back and my father did not call back, and my brother Colton sent a text at 2 in the afternoon that said "thinking of you," with 2 exclamation points, which is the punctuation of a person who wants credit for acknowledgement without the cost of presence. My daughter was 4 hours and 23 minutes old when the Venmo notification arrived. From my mother. The request was for $60. The memo line said, "Baby shower supplies." Let me tell you what the $60 was for before I tell you what I did with the notification, because the $60 had a history and the history mattered. 3 months before my daughter was born, my mother had offered to throw a baby shower. She had made the offer in the specific language she used for offer she wanted credit for making, the warm, enthusiastic announcement of a plan that positioned her as generous before the plan had been tested by any actual logistics. I had said yes with a genuine gratitude of a woman who was pregnant and alone, and whose pregnancy had not been received by her family of origin with the warmth she had hoped for, and who was therefore inclined to receive any warmth that appeared, regardless of its source or its reliability. The shower had been modest. 14 people, her house, the food she had made herself, decorations she had purchased, a cake from the grocery store bakery. I had arrived and been present and opened gifts and performed the gratitude that the occasion required, and had genuinely felt some of it, the genuine warmth of being in a room where people had assembled on your behalf, even if the assembly had required more orchestration from you than should have been necessary for your own shower. My mother had seemed to enjoy hosting it. 3 months later she sent a Venmo request from a hospital room. $60. The memo said "baby shower supplies." I was still in the bed where I had delivered my daughter alone. I need to tell you about the pregnancy before I tell you what I decided to do with the Venmo request, because the pregnancy was the context, and the context was 8 months of accumulating evidence about what my family was when tested by something real. I became pregnant at 32. The father was a man named Derek who I had been seeing for 7 months and who had received the news of the pregnancy with the specific expression of a person who had already been deciding whether the relationship was what he wanted and had just received information that forced the decision. He had been honest, which I will give him credit for in the accounting, and what he had said honestly was that he was not ready for this, and he did not think he would be, and that he understood this was my decision to make, and that he would support whatever I decided financially, but could not offer what the child would require from a father in the actual lived sense. I had made my decision. My family had received the decision with a specific response of people who loved me and were also uncomfortable with the situation and expressed their discomfort through the language of concern, which is the language people use when they want to communicate disapproval without accepting the label of disapproval. My mother had said she was worried about me. 3 times in the first week. Not worried in the practical sense, not worried in the way that produces help, but worried in the way that produces the specific weight of another person's anxiety deposited in your lap and left there for you to manage. My father had said that this was not what he had imagined for me. He had said this once and had not elaborated, and did not need to because the sentence was complete. My brother Colton had sent a text saying that he was there if I needed anything and had not been operationally present in any way that tested the claim. Marcus, who had known me since we were 21 and who was my best friend in the functional sense of a person who performs the role rather than just holding the title, had said, "What do you need and when do you need it, and I will be there." He had said this and then he had been there. For the appointments I asked him to come to. For the Tuesday evening dinners he had instituted in the third month without announcement, appearing at my door with food and staying for 2 hours and asking how I was feeling in the voice of a person who wanted the real answer. He had been there in the way my family had not. My closest friend Petra, who had known me since college and who lived 4 hours away and had driven those 4 hours twice during the pregnancy for the specific purpose of being present, had said something on the phone in the 6th month that I had been carrying since she said it. Her voice on the phone. The directness she brought to things she needed me to hear. Your family loves you in the way that costs them nothing. Her voice. And I need you to have appropriate expectations about what that kind of love produces when it is tested by something that costs something. My couch. The 6th month. The specific weight of a pregnancy at 6 months in the late evening. They came to the shower. My voice. Your mother threw a shower because it was social and visible and let her be the generous grandmother hosting a party. Her voice. Even. Not cruel. Precise. That cost her an afternoon and the price of grocery store cake. Watch what happens when what's required is an answer at 7:43 a.m. I had held this. 3 months later I found out what happened. What happened was 4 rings and voicemail. What happened was 3 rings and no message. What happened was 2 exclamation points at 2 in the afternoon from a brother who was thinking of me. What happened was a Venmo request at 11:47 p.m. while my daughter was asleep on my chest. I looked at the notification for a long time. Not in the way that implies indecision. In the way of a person who is making sure they are seeing what they are seeing, that the screen says what the screen says, that the memo line reads baby shower supplies and the amount reads $60 and the sender is listed as Diane Rourke, my mother, the woman who had not called back at 7:43 in the morning and had not appeared at the hospital and whose grandchild was 4 hours and 23 minutes old and asleep on my chest. Donna the nurse came in at 12 to check on us. She looked at my face. Her face did the thing the face of a woman who has been a labor and delivery nurse for 16 years does when she reads something in a patient's expression that the patient has not said. Do you need anything? Her voice. The voice of a woman who is asking a question with a wider scope than its words. My daughter's weight on my chest. The phone on the rolling table. No. My voice. I have everything I need right here. Donna looked at me for a moment. Then she looked at my daughter. Then she made a small adjustment to the blanket at the foot of the bed that did not need adjusting but gave her something to do with her hands while she was deciding whether to say something else. She did not say something else. She finished the adjustment and left, and I was alone again with my daughter and the phone and the $60 Venmo request from my mother. My daughter made a sound in her sleep. Not crying. The small involuntary sound of a newborn navigating the border between sleeping and waking, the sound that would wake me from any depth of sleep for years. I put my hand on her back. She settled. I picked up my phone with my other hand. I looked at the Venmo request one more time. Then I declined it. Not with a memo. Just the button. The clean digital acknowledgement that a request has been received and the answer is no. I put the phone face down on the rolling table. I looked at my daughter. She had my grandmother's mouth and her father's ears and a full head of dark hair, and she was 6 pounds 11 ounces and she was 4 hours and 27 minutes old, and she was the most complete thing I had ever seen. I counted her fingers again. 10. Still 10. The phone stayed face down for the rest of the night. The cliffhanger was not the declined request. The cliffhanger was what I understood in the hours between 11:47 p.m. in the morning, lying in a hospital bed with my daughter on my chest, and the specific quality of silence that belongs to a maternity ward at 3 in the morning, the sound of new lives arranged in their rooms doing the work of being new. I understood that the Venmo request was not an accident of timing. It was not a failure of awareness. My mother knew I had delivered because Colton had texted me at 2 in the afternoon, and had presumably communicated the information, and the request had arrived at 11:47, which meant she had known for hours, and the communication she chose to send was a payment request. She had looked at the situation and assessed it, and the assessment had produced a Venmo request. That assessment told me everything about the next 10 years of my daughter's life if I did not make a decision. It told me what holidays would look like. What the asking would look like. What the grandmother who had thrown a shower and sent a Venmo request from the delivery room would bring into my daughter's life if I continued to organize my expectations around the warmth my family produced in public rather than the evidence they produced under actual conditions. My daughter was 4 hours and 41 minutes old, and I lay in the hospital bed, and I made the decision I had been approaching for 8 months and had not let myself fully arrive at, because arriving at it required me to accept something I did not want to accept. I accepted it at 4 hours and 41 minutes. I looked at my daughter's face. It's going to be you and me. My voice. Quiet. Not sad. Something else. The voice of a person who has made a decision and is informing someone they love about it. You and me and Marcus and Petra and Donna and whoever else shows up when the situation costs something. That's our family. My daughter's breath on my chest. Even and steady and completely indifferent to the accounting being done around her, in the way of people who are new enough to the world that they have not yet learned what the accounting is for. My mother called at 9:14 the following morning. I was awake. I had been awake since 6 when my daughter had made the sound that would wake me from any depth of sleep for years, and we had spent the following 3 hours in the specific absorption of early newborn life, the feeding and the examining and the counting of fingers that I had now done 7 times. Marcus arrived at 8:30 with coffee and the specific energy of a man who had been outside the door waiting for a reasonable hour and had decided 8:30 was it. He sat in the chair beside the bed and held my daughter for the first time with the careful deliberateness of a person who understood they were holding something significant and intended to hold it correctly. He looked at her for a long time. She's extraordinary. His voice. Low. The voice of a man speaking from somewhere genuine. I know. My voice. Looking at her in his arms. My mother called at 9:14. I looked at the name on the screen. Marcus looked at me. I looked at my daughter in his arms. I picked up. We need to talk about the Venmo request. Her voice. Not an apology. The specific opening of a woman who has identified the problem as the request rather than the night that produced it. My hospital bed. The morning light through the window. My daughter in Marcus's arms. No. My voice. Even. Complete. A pause. Nora. Her voice. The register she used when she needed me to engage with something I was not engaging with. The request is declined. My voice. That's the last thing I'm going to say about the $60. I'm trying to talk to you about what happened. What happened is that I delivered your granddaughter alone. My voice. Still even? Still the same register throughout. You did not call back. You did not come. You sent a Venmo request at 11:47 p.m. A pause. I'm not going to have a conversation about the $60. I'm going to have a conversation about what comes next, but not right now. Right now I am in a hospital bed and my daughter is 11 hours old and I am going to focus on that. A silence on her end. Can we come see her? Her voice. Lower now. The warmth performing register gone, something more unsteady underneath. My daughter in Marcus's arms. His eyes on me. Not today. My voice. I'll be in touch. I ended the call. Marcus looked at me. How do you feel? His voice. My hands flat on the hospital bed. The morning light. My daughter's face. Clear. My voice. For the first time in 8 months I feel completely clear. Petra arrived on Thursday. 4 hours of driving. She came through the door of my apartment, where I had been home for 1 day, with food and practical items and the specific energy of a woman who had 4 hours of driving's worth of things she wanted to say and had organized them by priority during the drive. She sat across from me at my kitchen table with my daughter in the bassinet between us, and she looked at me with the directness she brought to things she needed me to hear. Tell me everything. Her voice. I told her. The morning calls. The voicemails. The 2 exclamation points. The 11 hours. Donna the nurse. The notification at 11:47. The memo line. The declining of the request. The 9:14 call. Petra listened to the whole thing without interrupting, which was not her natural state and which told me she had decided that listening completely was what the moment required. When I finished, she looked at the bassinet. At my daughter. At her sleeping face. What did you name her? Petra's voice. Quiet. Elise. My voice. After my grandmother. Petra looked at me. Your grandmother, who was the person in your family who actually showed up. Her voice. Yes. My voice. She looked at the bassinet again. Good. Her voice. That's exactly right. My parents came to my apartment 10 days after Elise was born. I had called my mother on day 7 and told her they could come on Saturday. I had chosen day 7 deliberately, not as punishment, but because day 7 was when I had fully emerged from the immediate postpartum period into something that felt like the beginning of my regular capacity, and I needed my regular capacity for this conversation. My father sat on the couch. My mother sat beside him. Elise was in the bassinet near the window, asleep, doing the thing she did in the mid-morning. I sat across from them. I had decided what I wanted to say and I said it without preamble. I'm going to tell you what I observed and then I'm going to tell you what I need going forward. My voice. Level. The voice I had been practicing not because it required practice but because I wanted to make sure it came out as information rather than accusation. My mother's hands in her lap. I called at 7:43 in the morning. My voice. I left a message telling you I was going to the hospital. You did not call back. Neither of you called back. I was in labor for 11 hours. I delivered Elise alone. At 11:47 p.m. you sent me a Venmo request for $60. My father looked at the bassinet. My mother's hands tightened in her lap. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on why. My voice. I've stopped being interested in the why. I'm interested in what it tells me about what I should expect going forward. We should have been there. My father's voice. Low. The stripped-down register of a man who had no defense available and had decided not to attempt one. We should have called back. There's no explanation that makes that acceptable. I looked at him. No. My voice. There isn't. My mother's eyes came up. Wet. The tears of a woman arriving at something she had been holding at arm's length. I panicked. Her voice. Low. When you called I heard the message and I didn't know what to do and I kept telling myself I would call back in a few minutes and the few minutes became hours and by the time I understood what I had done it was the middle of the night and I thought. She stopped. You thought what? My voice. Patient. Genuinely asking. I thought the request would. She stopped again. Her hands in her lap. I thought if I handled the practical thing it would be something. I know how that sounds. It sounds like the logic of a person who is more comfortable with a Venmo request than with a phone call. My voice. Even. Because the phone call required you to account for the 11 hours. Her face. Yes. Her voice. One word. The weight of it. My father looked at Elise in the bassinet. Can I hold her? His voice. I looked at my father for a moment. Yes. My voice. You can hold her. He stood up and crossed to the bassinet with a careful movement of a man approaching something that mattered and understanding he was not owed the approach. He reached in and picked up Elise with both hands and she made the small sound she made when she was disturbed from sleep and then settled against his chest. He stood there with her for a long time without speaking. My mother was looking at him. At Elise. At her hands. What do you need from us? My mother's voice. The question of a woman who had decided that this was the question and was asking it directly for the first time in the conversation. My hands flat on my knees. I need you to understand that what happened that night is the evidence I have about what you do when the situation requires something real. My voice. I am not going to forget it and I am not going to pretend I have forgotten it and I am not going to organize my expectations for Elise's life around your capacity for warmth in public settings. Her face. The specific expression of a woman receiving something accurate and finding it more painful than she anticipated. What I need going forward is that when something is real you show up for the real thing. My voice. Not afterward. Not with a Venmo request. For the real thing. In real time. My father looked at me from across the room with Elise against his chest. We will. His voice. The voice of a man making a commitment he understood he was not in a position to refuse. I need you to understand that I will be watching. My voice. Not cruel. True. Not to catch you. Because Elise is going to be building her understanding of who her family is over the next 10 years and I am going to be paying attention to what she is building it from. The apartment. The morning light. Elise against my father's chest. My mother nodded. The nod of a woman who had received the full weight of a thing had decided to hold it rather than put it down. What happened after the apartment conversation was not a transformation. My parents showed up 3 times in the first month after that Saturday. Not every day. Not with the consistency of people who had dramatically reorganized themselves. 3 times. Each time with notice. Each time present in the actual functional sense of people who had come to be there rather than to be seen being there. My mother held Elise at the second visit with the specific careful attention of a woman who was being deliberate about the holding, who understood that the holding was a practice and not a performance. My father came on a Wednesday when I had a medical appointment and stayed with Elise for 2 hours. He texted me when she fell asleep. He sent a photo. The photo was my daughter asleep on his chest with his large hand covering most of her back. I looked at the photo for a long time. It was not the night in the hospital. It was not the 11 hours. It was not the voicemail and the 4 rings and the Venmo request. It was a Wednesday afternoon and my father was holding my daughter while I was at a medical appointment and he had sent a photo to show me she was fine. Both things were true simultaneously. The night in the hospital and the Wednesday afternoon. I held them both because the holding of both was the honest version and I had decided at 4 hours and 41 minutes in a hospital bed that the honest version was the only one I was going to live in. Marcus came for dinner on Thursdays. He had been doing this since the 3rd month of the pregnancy and he continued doing it without announcement, arriving at my door with food and staying for 2 hours, and the arrival had expanded to include holding Elise for the first hour while I ate with both hands, a luxury I had not fully appreciated until it became a luxury. He arrived one Thursday with his girlfriend Carla, who I had met twice before and who arrived at my door and looked at Elise with the specific expression of a woman encountering a newborn for the first time since deciding she wanted one and finding the encounter clarifying. Carla held Elise for 45 minutes. She looked up at me at some point during the 45 minutes and said something that I have thought about many times since. She looks like someone who's going to be fine. Her voice. Looking at Elise. She has that quality. The quality of a person who came in knowing something. My kitchen. My dinner going cool on the table. Elise in Carla's arms. What quality? My voice. Carla looked at me. The quality of a person who is already home. Her voice. Wherever she is, she's already home. I looked at my daughter in the arms of a woman I had met twice and who had driven across the city on a Thursday evening to have dinner and hold my baby and say the thing that was true. Yes. My voice. She is. Elise is 7 months old. She has learned to recognize faces and responds to mine with the specific full-body joy of a person who has identified their person and is not subtle about the identification. She has a sound she makes when she is interested in something, a particular vowel that functions as her commentary on the world. She has opinions about her toys that she communicates with the directness available to someone without language, which is considerable. My parents see her on Sundays. Not every Sunday. Most Sundays. The consistency is not perfect and I have stopped requiring perfection and started requiring honesty, which means I assess what they actually do rather than what they say they will do and I organize my expectations accordingly. My mother has not sent another Venmo request. Colton visited once. He held Elise for 10 minutes and took a photo for his own account and left after an hour. I noted this without naming it to anyone and I filed it in the accurate accounting I maintain of what each person in my life does when the situation costs something. Petra drove the 4 hours last month for no specific occasion. She arrived on a Saturday morning and stayed through Sunday, and we did nothing in particular, and the nothing in particular was the most restorative weekend I had had since Elise was born. Marcus comes on Thursdays. The Venmo request is the clearest thing that has ever happened to me. I want to say that precisely because precision is what the thing deserves. It was the clearest because it was unambiguous. There was no room for interpretation, no version in which the memo line reading baby shower supplies at 11:47 p.m. from a hospital delivery room could be received as anything other than exactly what it was. My family loves me. I believe this. The love is real and it is the love they are capable of, which is the love of people who show up for the things that are easy and visible and social and who recede from the things that require them to be present in the middle of the night without an audience. I have stopped requiring them to be more than they are. I have stopped requiring this not because I have given up on them but because requiring people to be more than they are produces resentment in you and defensiveness in them, and neither of those is useful for a 7-month-old who is learning what her family is. What I have done instead is build the actual family, the one that shows up when the situation costs something, and I have been explicit with myself about who is in it and why. Marcus is in it. Petra is in it. Donna, the labor and delivery nurse who adjusted the blanket that did not need adjusting, is in it in the specific way of people who are briefly present for significant things and whose presence matters regardless of its duration. Carla, who held my daughter for 45 minutes on a Thursday and said she already looks home, is in it. My parents are in it in the way that people are in a family when you have accepted them as they are rather than as you need them to be. That is a different kind of membership. It does not require less love. It requires more honesty. Elise is 7 months old and she does not know yet what a Venmo request is. She will know someday. She will know the story of the night she was born and what the notification said and what her mother did with it. I will tell her when she is old enough for the telling to mean something rather than just be a story. What I want her to understand when I tell her is not what the notification said. What I want her to understand is what I understood at 4 hours and 41 minutes in a hospital bed with my hand on her back. That the people who show up when it costs something are the people who love you in the way that actually builds something. And the people who do not show up are not bad people. They are just people whose love has a limit, and the limit is approximately the boundary of their own comfort, and you are allowed to know where that limit is and organize your expectations accordingly and still love them for what they can offer without requiring them to offer what they cannot. Elise is 7 months old and she is already home wherever she is. I made sure of that at 11:47 p.m. in a hospital bed when I declined a request and put the phone face down and counted my daughter's fingers again. 10. Still 10. And more than enough. And if you are lying in a hospital bed or standing in a kitchen or sitting in any room where someone who is supposed to love you has just sent you a bill for the privilege of being cared about, understand this: that request tells you everything you need to know about the love being offered, and the most important decision you will ever make is whether to keep organizing your life around the love people perform or to start building it around the love people actually show up for. Decline the request. Count the fingers. Build accordingly.